What's going on, guys? I'm here at the Morris County Card Show with a Yankee legend, catcher Jim Leyrtiz. If you remember, Jim from the 1996 World Series hit one of the most clutch home runs in Yankees postseason history against the Atlanta Braves. Jim, thank you so much for coming out and joining us at the show today.
Thanks for having me, Gordy.
Yeah, so right before we started recording, I was asking you about your hobby experience. We're at a card show. Do you remember collecting cards as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, back then we used to put them on our bicycles and things. I'm going way back.
Right.
But no, I grew up with the big red machine in Cincinnati, and yeah, I still have Pete Rose's card, Johnny Bench's card, Joe Morgan, that big red machine era.
I mean, that was a dominant team back in the day.
Yeah, that was kind of like our late 90s Yankees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of my audience collects that era of Cincinnati Reds cards. I know some of my favorite cards are the mid to late 60s Pete Rose cards. I know you had mentioned he was one of your favorite players growing up.
He was my idol. I wore number 14 in high school. And
Did you?
I got probably the most important piece of advice from him. He used to go to spring training, and I stayed at the team hotel with Tommy Brenneman. And I saw him one day, and I said, Mr. Rose, how are you so good in such big moments and clutch moments? And he said, you know what, Jimmy? He goes, it's spring training right now. Every at-bat, every drill I do, that at-bat is the most important at-bat. And he goes, it doesn't matter what time of year it comes. That at-bat's the most important thing, so I don't get caught up in everything that goes on around, as far as the height.
Sure.
And I took that advice to heart as a 14-year-old kid. And
that's great.
That's why I tell people all the time, I never got nervous in those situations because all I was thinking about was the at-bat itself.
Yeah, I mean, that goes into work ethic. It goes into that consistency. I mean, Pete Rose was a gamer.
Oh, yeah.
Every single at-bat, like you said, he was fully there. I personally think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. I have a feeling you feel the same.
100%.
Yeah.
Especially now that they're making money off gambling.
Right.
It's like, you know what? Let's say, all right, Pete, we're making money now on gambling and everything else. You were wrong. You're never going to go in as a manager, but we're going to finally put you in as a player.
Right.
And before you die.
Right.
Let's not wait till you die and then put you in.
Right.
We're going to put you in before. The one thing that the hardest part I don't understand is they want him to go away. Well, every year at the Hall of Fame, you've been there at the Hall of Fame. Who's there signing autographs? And usually is the most popular guy. It's Pete Rose.
Yeah.
Because he's not in there. Put him in, he goes away.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's twofold. Yes, there's that media attention that he's not in there, but just like you, there were so many kids that idolized him and looked up to him. He was Charlie Hustle. He was a face of baseball for a long time. It's like for me growing up, having Derek Jeter not be in the Hall of Fame, to find out that he was putting bets in on you guys in the 90s. It's very hard.
We may find that out in 10 more years.
Yeah. to rationalize it.
That's one thing I did love about Pete was his latest quote with the Ohtani situation.
Yes.
I wish I had an interpreter back in 1977.
Yeah, the Ohtani situation is wild to see that come through this year.
It's going to be curious if we ever get the truth.
Yeah.
What really did happen.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you've been in major league clubhouses. I'm sure stuff like this has been going on a long time. When you were playing back in the day, were you aware of the spreads of games and things like that? Or has that really adventured longer?
I mean, not really not baseball. We knew, unlike Pete, we knew that you weren't supposed to gamble on baseball.
Right.
But you could gamble on everything else. I mean, we had Super Bowl boxes. We had, the Kentucky Derby's happening today. I guarantee you every locker room in baseball has the Kentucky Derby odds. And they're selling boxes or selling something.
Right.
It's just, that's part of the nature of it. Basketball games, hockey games, but you could not bet on your sport.
Right.
And that's understandable,
Sure.
especially when you're playing.
Right. Now, we were talking about Pete Rose earlier, and you had mentioned you were a fan of that big red machine. You told me a story about why you became a catcher in that Reds team. I'd love it for you if you could share with the audience about how you wanted to become a catcher.
Yeah, so we were down in spring training one year at that point, again, Tommy Brenneman, and they were doing a pitching segment and a catching segment. Hitting segment and a catching segment. And they needed two little kids to kind of be their dummies.
Yeah.
And I was praying to God Pete would pick me because I was Pete Rose. And he picked Tommy. I got stuck with Johnny Bench. And I say I got stuck with Johnny Bench kiddingly now.
Right.
But at the time, I was really kind of disappointed. I wanted Pete. And we do the catching segment. We get all done with it. Johnny calls me over and he goes, hey, kid, you a catcher? And I said, no, Mr. Bench, I want to be Pete.
Right.
And he goes, well, at your age, my dad told me catching is the quickest way to the big leagues. And we got some pretty good skills just in the short time we did these drills. He said, you got to think about becoming a catcher. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I think he could notice I wasn't buying into it.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, maybe this will help. He took his catcher's mitt and he signed it and he handed it to me. I went home that night and said, Dad, I'm going to become a catcher. A couple things happened along the way. I was playing third base in the outfield. When I finally went back to catching is when the New York Yankees signed me as a free agent, not drafted, but as a free agent. They signed me because I went back to catching.
That's phenomenal. And
then I got a chance in 2006.
I was going to ask about this as well.
To see him in a locker room. And I hadn't seen him since I'd played. And I just went up to him and I said, Johnny, I just got to tell you that I want to thank you for my career. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I told him, you remember giving a little kid giving him your glove after doing a segment. And he's like, oh my God, you were not that kid. And I'm like, yeah, I was that kid. And the only reason I got to go to the big leagues is because I could catch. And I have you to thank for that.
Yeah, I mean, an incredible story. And it's kind of like, I don't know, thinking about that next generation and the major leaguers who always thought about that. We're always kind to fans, and obviously even in player development as a young age. I think that's awesome. Johnny Bench, another legend. And a great card. 1968 Topps is his rookie card.
Well, you mentioned you're a historian, right?
Yes, I try to be.
So one fact you may not know
is
that in 1982 in Cincinnati, Ohio, I was supposed to be pick right behind Barry Larkin.
Wow.
Barry and I were teammates. Barry was supposed to be the number 1 pick out of Cincinnati. I was supposed to be the number 2 kid selected.
Wow.
4 days before the draft, I went out and played tennis, and I fractured the side of my foot, and I couldn't squat, and I was out. So I was out for 2 weeks.
Wow.
My dad did not know I was out playing tennis, so that's how I did it. So I come home with this air cast on my foot, and my dad goes, what the hell did you do to yourself? I said, not a big deal. I'm only out 2 weeks. I'll be back playing for the summer team with Barry. And I said, we'll be okay. And he goes, oh, it's a big deal. 2 scouts just called me and said they're going to make you a pick in 4 days. Now I got to tell them you got a broken foot. And I was like, oh, shoot.
That's crazy.
So sure enough, the scouts, they passed on me, but they said, we'll come back and watch you play in 5 weeks. So they came back. Barry and I were playing on the summer team together called Midland, which Ken Griffey Jr. played on, and a few other guys. And they came back and watched me play. They went to my dad and said, hey, we want to sign him. My dad said, give him $10,000. And they said, we can only give him 5. And my dad said, screw that, he's going to college. So I went to junior college for 2 years in Georgia, never got drafted. Went to University of Kentucky 1 year, never got drafted, but I wasn't catching yet. So then I went out to Hayes, Kansas, played for the Hayes Larks in the Jayhawk League, and I started catching. And a Yankee scout came up to me after a 3-game series and goes, what are you doing catching? I said, well, I can catch. The coach at Kentucky just wouldn't let me because his nephew was one of the catchers.
Okay.
And he goes, well, not according to your draft card. It says you can't catch. That's why we passed on it.
Wow.
He said, I just saw you catch 3 days. You want to sign? I'm like, let's go. So I signed with the New York Yankees. Now, the irony of that story, is that those 2 scouts that wouldn't give me that extra $5,000 were sitting in John Schuerholz's box in 1996 in Atlanta Fulton County Stadium when I hit the home run off Mark Wohlers. And they looked at each other and said, do not tell Schuerholz for $5,000 we could have changed this entire situation.
Yeah. That's crazy.
The scout was Hep Cronin out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Wow. Mickey Cronin, the coach for UCLA. It's his son. And my dad sees him all the time and is like, listen, you could have changed the history of the Braves and the Yankees forever.
Yeah, I mean, that was a real turning point in the Braves and Yankees rivalry in the 90s, was that specific home run. I had posted a video this week on my channel on the Morris County Card Show account about that home run. And I had a bunch of Braves fans writing comments like, thanks for giving me nightmares, because they still remember that home run. Now, when I watched it, I remember he was throwing heat to you. He was touching 99, almost 100 miles an hour. Do you remember that at bat still vividly?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do a lot of public speaking, so the highlight is one of my introductions to my speaking.
Sure.
But it's just really interesting because, Tim McCarver is probably one of the smartest announcers. If you listen to that at bat, he said, Wohlers is going to the slider too much.
Yeah.
And then when he hit 99 on the 1-2 pitch or 2-1 pitch, he threw 99. Then McCarver said, oh, the next one's going to be 100. Yeah. And he threw 2 sliders in a row. And again, that's what he said. He's going to the slider too much.
Right.
And then I hit the home run.
Right. He kind of left one hanging on you.
And as people are always like, oh, were you looking slider? I'm like, no. He threw me a really good slider the pitch before, and I barely fouled it off. I thought for sure he's going to come with a fastball in,
Yeah.
and he threw another slider.
That's phenomenal. So do you still keep in touch with any of your teammates from the 96 Yankees?
So, yeah, I mean, we see each other. We do the fantasy camps together down in Tampa.
Okay.
One of the great things about the Yankees is they continue to bring you back to do sweet appearances. And,
Yeah.
Because the fans want to see you.
Yeah.
And thank God they haven't won too many World Series. So we're still the popular guys.
That's right.
But yeah, so I'm back here quite a bit.
Do you think the Yankees this year have what it takes? They look pretty good so far.
You know what? They're going to win 90 to 100 games like they do every year.
Yeah.
The bigger question is, are they able to play in the postseason? And
right.
Let's hope that changes with the addition of Soto and Verdugo and some of these guys.
I'd like to hope so. I like to see the changes.
The one thing that I do see different is there's a personality again.
Yeah.
These guys look like they're having a little bit of fun playing.
Right.
Where it hasn't been that way in the last few years.
I think so too. So I'll be excited to see. It's all about the postseason. Yankees fans expect, the Yankees to be there. Yeah. But you're here at the Morris County Card Show today. We have copies of your book, Catching Heat, signing autographs. We're going to maybe go down the show floor a little bit, look at some cards. Anything you want to talk about with your book?
Yeah, no, listen, I wrote it in 2011. It's all about never being drafted.
Yeah.
Never giving up. When people tell you no,
right.
don't do that. But also for fighting for the truth. I went through 3 years of a very tough hardship, going through a trial that I would not take a plea, and I wanted to go to court. Once I went to court, it was proved that I wasn't responsible for the accident. But it was a hard time, and I kind of wrote the book kind of before the accident happened, and then the final 3 chapters are those 3 years of going through, waiting for trial, and then getting to trial and having the jury throw it out in 30 minutes. So it's just a synopsis of my whole life, and just about never giving up, never settling, always going for the truth, basically. Yeah. And I cannot tell you that if there was anything that I'd ever change in my life differently, besides the woman passing away in the accident, I think that I would not have changed a thing, because it's made me the person I am today.
Sure. And again, guys, his book is Catching Heat. We're here at the Morris County Card Show today. These can be purchased online as well, I would assume?
Yep, at jimleyritz.com, which is my website.
Okay, jimleyritz.com. Check them out. Thank you so much again for coming out to Morris County Card Show. Let's check out some cards down on the show floor.
All right, let's do it.
Thanks.